You're just so excited. Oh my God. Okay, well, I don't want to delay any longer then. Now is the time for our third and final lecture. A very enthusiastic and warm and heartfelt welcome for Marlowe Granados.
I'm taking the microphone out because I like to move around a little bit. All right. Thank you so much for staying for me. I love that. I honestly, I've come to Trampoline Hall maybe 3 times, and I've left before every third speaker. So I think it's time that I am the third speaker. Glamour is subjective. It's terribly difficult to describe, but people know when they've come into contact with it. The origin of the word is witchy. You would cast a glamour to change someone's vision into seeing everything as beautiful and fascinating. Looking up contemporary definitions, the one phrase that sticks is having an unreal charm. Virginia Postrel describes glamour as being translucent, the details we don't see. We often fill in with our own desires. She writes that it's known to be false but felt to be true. Glamour intensifies longing, fosters hope, and stokes ambition. My grandmother, who I have always found glamorous, likes to chastise me. She's been telling me since I was 6 or 7 to never compromise civilized living because of laziness. To her, glamour means to live in a refined way, even if it's particularly difficult. My grandmother has worn Chanel lipstick to bed since she was 18. She wants me to mention tonight that glamour is rare in that one can be born with it as well as one can acquire it over time. To give you a framework for my relationship to glamour, we must begin where all therapists start. Childhood. My working class family considers my upbringing a success. Thank you. Growing up, I wasn't really allowed outside. We lived in Scarborough in the early 90s, so my family often terrorized me with stories of white vans and someone named Carla Homolka. I didn't learn to ride a bike till I was 12 and would not describe myself as a strong swimmer unless swimming is just floating for a minute at a time. Instead, I practiced piano, read books, dabbled with watercolors and oil paints. I practiced any feminine diversion popular in 19th century novels. My family's plan was for me to become a sophisticated, cultured person, but most of all, a delight. I live with my mother, who is very young and very divorced. I grew up on old Hollywood films and what I call divorcee music, which includes but is not limited to Billie Holiday, Nina Simone, and Sarah Vaughan. I have memories of my mother when she was my age with her friends. They were 28 and would come over to drink wine, wearing knee-high boots and had names like Jose and Ivy. Their style was Perry Ellis and Calvin Klein, all 90s minimalism topped off with a chic brown lip and sleek short hair. They wore perfume like CK1 and Dior Poison. You all know what I mean. I was the only child in a room of adults, and I flourished. I loved being the exception, and I loved being in with women who fascinated me. After school, I spent the hours before my mother finished work at my grandparents' house. To keep me quiet and entertained, we often watched old films. In that house, we all had opinions on our favorite stars. My grandmother, well, Natalie Wood was her number 1. And of course, her husband, Robert Wagner, murdered her. My grandmother did not admire Katharine Hepburn, but could tolerate Audrey. My grandfather believed the only acceptable James Bond was Sean Connery, and we all agreed on Cary Grant. For me, I started with Marilyn, Audrey, Grace Kelly in comedic roles. In all the films I loved, there was a sense that these women were, yes, of course, beautiful and stylish, but also inherently mischievous. Like they were all in on some joke that you couldn't be a part of. It was as though they held back a sly secret for themselves. And that distance, to me, became what I believed to be essence, that little je ne sais quoi. Now dating, ooh. As most people perceive it, is a journey towards a destination. Once you are in a relationship, dating as a lifestyle ends. When I speak of dating here, I mean the never-ending hellscape that is going on actual dates. We could call it the courtship period, but that gives it too much grace. I was in New York last week, and I passed an old factory building that said top dollar for scraps. This is, sadly, to me, an accurate description of modern dating. Dating often feels like an uphill saga that is convincing people you're worth it. If not worth love, then at least dinner. Or maybe respect. In the 1932 film One Way Passage, William Powell holds the glamorous Kay Francis in his arms and says, "You're so lovely. It's hard to be brutal to you." Unblinkingly, she responds, "Up to now, men have always been brutal to me because I am lovely." I am definitely not saying I have a horrible dating life because I consider myself glamorous. No. That would be ridiculous. But I have to say it's definitely not helping. The more I pursue these two things that frankly take up much of my time and interest, the more I feel they are somehow incompatible. Our friend Melissa Pang coined the phrase heterosexual squalor. She defines it as the carnival of indignity and inequity that tends to define the straight woman condition. My interpretation of this term is the bare minimum women are willing to accept for lack of better options. And even worse than that, it is accepting the bare minimum while praising its mediocrity. Now, dating was never something someone told me to do. My family likes to avoid the subject entirely. It almost embarrasses them. They're of the opinion that I was raised for more than that. I am squandering my delightful qualities on people that don't understand the value of of me. Oh, I must agree, it's true. Men often want you to have interests. But not in any expert way. That might make them feel intimidated. And if you must be an expert, have it be something that they might find negligible, like fashion. When men cannot be in control, they feel uncomfortable, and it is not my personality to accept terms that ultimately they try to set. Luckily, another thing that makes them uncomfortable is being written about. I can't fully illustrate the scope of the heterosexual squalor that I have experienced, but here are some recent notes. Creative director who lives in loft says that he cannot see us dating in any serious capacity. I did not ask his opinion on this because I am a reasonable person, of course. And we are on a second date. He still lists the reasons why he does not see it happening. 1, I do not cook. 2, I seem messy. 3, I seem like I would expect a lot from my partner. And almost in the same breath, he tells me he does not believe in divorce as a concept at all. That's really true, that really happened. Freelance illustrator in a non-monogamous relationship with a live-in partner says he does not like me after 1 drink. He shrugs after I ask why. He says, "You have no self-doubt." That's so sweet, thank you. Music producer who lives at his parents' house in Forest Hill says that I am going to crush it in my future, and that I am so pretty and smart, but I will end up disappointed in him, and that he thinks we should leave things in 2019. We are double parked in front of my house on a one-way street, so after his revelation, I run out of the car because we're holding up traffic. Philosophy professor says I am taking away from his work, and that he could never be with someone who so easily picks up their mannerisms. I know, crazy. Graphic designer with foot fetish who wants to buy me toe socks says he must continue on his journey to finding his partner after I tell him I would not go windsurfing with him. I don't know if any of you know this, but men in this city love the outdoors. It's not a joke. It's really awkward. It's all drudgery. If glamour, this elusive concept, has been set up as one of my personal staple values, it is the pursuit of love life that is inconsistent. How is it possible that the head of a French TV network can text me on the hour every hour, and yet the local bartender is too busy? The other day, a man came to meet me for the first time having not showered. He really thought he was going to be able to just roll out of bed and ask to split the check. I was wearing Prada. So stressful. The squalor is diametrically opposed to my values. It was an adversary all along. Luckily, the secret that I held back for myself is the joke that these men are not in on. That I am completely unflappable. I am unfazed by their absolute nonsense and probably laughing about it all the time. Glamour is controlled. It's the appearance of being effortless, mysterious, but also somehow achievable. And not entirely knowable, of course. It is also frail, and with one misstep it falls away, and the height of which it drops is colossal. Familiarity is the death of glamour, so I'm sorry about your long-term relationships, that's over. It has a temporary appeal. You can't ever be somewhere for very long. I have a lot of friends who make jokes that I'm only ever somewhere for 10 minutes. So I'm gonna leave after 10 minutes here. All we ever want is to be in proximity to glamour, because it gives us hope that that kind of life is not so far off. It is both an armor and an expression, and in the end, it is very singular and very alone. That's it, honey.
Marlowe Granados.
I'm gonna get my drink, hold on.